Welcome to the Hockey Writers Flames Faceoff, a weekly show with our top Calgary Flames writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, our team covers everything that happens with the Flaming Sea. So get set, get focused. It's time for the Flames Faceoff. Flames Faceoff.
Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Quinney, and this is the Flames Faceoff, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. Now, this is a weekly show where we bring together some of our top writers in the Calgary Flames writing pool, and we discuss all things Flames. Now, to be sure you don't miss an episode of this, what you can do is subscribe to this YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and give us a like if you like what you see on YouTube and Facebook, and be sure to share this with your fellow Flames fans. So with that, let's get going. I'd like to introduce the panel. We have with us Colton Pankiw. Welcome, Colton.
Hey, Paul. How's it going?
Good, good. What's on the hat? What are we wearing today?
This is just a hat I got when I was out on the East Coast this summer. First time visiting, so had to come home with something.
All right. The land of Sidney Crosby out there in Cole Harbor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And none other than Mr. Greg Tysowski. Greg, welcome. How are you doing?
Pretty good, except I may have slightly re-injured myself golfing yesterday. I forgot my golf shoes. And I had these kind of canvas slip-on type shoes, and I used those, and it was kind of a frosty morning, and I was slipping around up there, and it was not a good score, and it wasn't a good feeling. So hopefully I haven't ruined my beer league comeback chances too much here, but I'll be okay. Don't worry about me, guys. Don't worry. I got this.
Don't let that get out into the press, the beer league press, man. Your nature, and just keep it as a upper body injury, I guess. Yeah, don't get too specific here on the Flames Face-Off. Yeah.
All right, you got it.
Well, let's training camp's over. We're 6 days away from the start of the season. The hated Edmonton Oilers are in town next Saturday night. And I realize you can't read too much into the preseason, but let's do it anyway. How do you think it went for the team, the preseason? Just looking at the stats, and again, you can't read too much into it, but they racked up 3 wins. They beat the Jets, the Seattle Kraken, and the Vancouver Canucks, and then they dropped 5. Scored 21 goals and had 22 goals scored against them. And head coach Daryl Sutter said, and this is quite a quote, honesty, work ethic, consistency, structure, pace, work, discipline, identity. We've been pretty good at that so far this preseason. That's Daryl's assessment. What say you guys? Colton, how do you feel about the training camp just concluded? Is he right in that assessment?
Well, I mean, I think he right now kind of has the best view on things. Like you said, it's tough to read too much into preseason. It usually isn't a very good indicator. I mean, you don't usually have your full lineups going. There's a lot that goes into it. So I think the fact that he seems pretty happy with how the team looks right now in camp and everything is the most optimistic view you can get. So I think it's an exciting thing for Flames fans to hear. I mean, obviously we'll figure out as soon as October 16th how that looks and from there on. But I think right now things have been going pretty well. I know their preseason record, like you mentioned, wasn't great, but again, I don't think that's anything. I don't think it's too indicative of how they'll perform this year. So yeah, I think things are looking pretty good there right now.
Yeah. Well, you gave an upbeat assessment. Certainly you'd expect that from a guy called nicknamed the Jolly Rancher. Greg, would you be that jolly if based on what you've seen, if you were Sutter and you looked at the training camp?
Yeah, I don't know, because that big laundry list that you listed off there of those qualities that you want to see, that is like Sutter style hockey to a T. Like all of those descriptors are what he's looking for. And did I see that in training camp? Well, kind of yes and no. They had some pretty good efforts, but there was a couple of games where they were really, really outplayed and outshot. Like that first game against Winnipeg, the score flattered the Flames, and Dan Vladar had a good game to keep them in it. But in the second game, they bounced back, which was nice to see. But in about, I think three of those games, they were completely like dominated, and that's not Sutter style hockey. Like I think Sutter style hockey is more like the final game of the preseason where they both had about low 20s in the shots, and they keeping the shots down, keeping the chances down. But I know that there was some bad games with a different lineup, but I would say they did okay. But if Daryl Sutter says he's kind of a straight shooter, and if he likes what he sees, he's not going to pull any punches. Like he's not going to tell you something he doesn't believe. So yeah, I guess I would say it's if he's happy, I'm happy, because like Colton said, he's the closest to the action, and I guess once regular season starts, we'll see what happens. We'll see if he's correct, and that if he can bring the Sutter style hockey, into a successful season.
Yeah, well, we're going to know in 6 days. Just want to turn here as well, switching gears to the Jack Eichel saga. Colton, you wrote a piece this week. Flames, quote, really tried to acquire Jack Eichel, according to highly credible insider. And I guess my question to you, you pick up the paper today and you'll see the Flames mentioned as one of the teams now trying to acquire Eichel. I guess the question I have is, should they be trying to make that acquisition? What do you think, Colton?
I think it's like that whole situation in Buffalo is just a mess. I think it's tough because as soon as he gets traded, then he's going to have to undergo the surgery, meaning he's going to miss. I think from everything I've read, if he gets the surgery he's looking for, it's roughly like 8 to 10 weeks, somewhere in there. But again, that's kind of just a ballpark. It doesn't sound like they're 100% sure on that. So I think if you do that, the pieces you'd have to move to acquire him, you're kind of hurting your team for those 8 to 10 weeks. So it was a trade that would have made a lot more sense in the summer, just that then he'd be able to go for the start of the year. So I don't know what happens with him now. It's kind of, I feel bad for him just in the fact that I don't know which teams, aside from maybe a team like Anaheim who's going to struggle, could go out and acquire him right now. But for the Flames, I think it doesn't make sense until they at least get a view for how their season's going. Like if they really struggle, then why not? But I think if they start out good, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to do during the season just because of how much time he's going to be missing.
Right. Greg, what's your take? I mean, could the Flames meet his asking price, and should they meet it? From what I've seen, the names being, it's drafts, picks, prospects, core players, Gaudreau and Lindholm are mentioned. What's your take? Can they afford the price?
Well, I think they can definitely afford the price if they wanted to do this. If they really decided, they're going to go all in. And this is something which a lot of Flames fans have been looking for years, is to try something big, to swing for the fences. And, it's kind of high risk, high reward. If they could pull this off, and long term, all of a sudden you have an elite number one center, which they haven't had since I don't know when. People talk about Joe Nieuwendyk being the last elite center they had, which is kind of crazy to think about that. So yeah, if you talk to a lot of Flames fans, I think they would say go for it, swing for the fences, and if you fall flat in your face, then you're kind of where you are now, which is kind of this middling team that may or may not make the playoffs. So I've always thought that the Flames should try something big, and they haven't done that. And I know they obviously tried. We kind of been reading in the media the reports of how Treliving did go for this, and I do know that having a bunch of prospects, especially on the defensive side, like they could probably give up Shillington or Valimaki or something, because they're both kind of like seem to be equal on the depth chart right now. And so I don't think they have room for both of those guys on the main roster right now. So maybe that's someone who could be packaged as part of a deal. And and Lindholm is probably their most consistent player. Be ashamed to lose him, but how often can you get what many people think is a truly elite center, to play for your team? So, I would be leaning towards just go for it and see what happens, and kind of swing for the fences and give it a shot. But I know that's not the most safe view to take. So, I'm still curious. I think something could still happen in the next couple of weeks. We could see something.
Yeah. I mean, Elliot Friedman, he says at this point, Eichel is willing to go, quote, just about anywhere just to get out of Buffalo. Sounds like Calgary or any other team might be able to drive a better bargain here. Do you think his price has gone down, Colton? What do you think? I mean, we're assuming he cost a whole pile, but maybe not now.
Well, I mean, I think it's a good news for the Sabres in the sense that I think he's willing to go anywhere just because you have more teams in the running to negotiate. But with how long this is dragged out, I think the Sabres, I think their GM here, Kevin Adams, is in a pretty tough spot just because like he's kind of almost at this point, everyone's talking about it and like you got to move on, you got to trade on. This isn't fair for the player. I think it's a tough trade to win. So I do think whoever acquires him will get him at a fairly decent price just because of how long this has drug on, and it's just it's going to become more and more of a story as the season goes on until he gets moved. So it's honestly a distraction for the Sabres at this point. So I do think whoever gets him will get him at a bit of a discounted price, and if he comes back the same player he was before, that could be a huge, like a franchise altering move for whoever does bring him in.
I mean, how bad must it be for him in Buffalo if he's just get me out of town? I don't care where. Put me in and trade me anywhere. I don't know if it's that bad, but boy, I think you described it, Buffalo, Colton, as what do you call it? A dumpster fire or something?
Yeah, train wreck, dumpster fire, any of the above. That I know a lot of people have kind of blamed Eichel a bit for that, which I just don't think is fair. I think the pieces they put around and everything there, he got put into a pretty bad situation, in my opinion.
Yeah. Greg, you got any thoughts just before we close this out on Eichel, dumpster fires or otherwise?
Well, I think it bodes well for Calgary because Treliving said, I think in a press conference a month or so ago, talking about how hard it is to get free agents and trades to come to Calgary because of the various, cold climate and tax situation and small market, yada, yada, yada. If Jack Eichel's willing to go anywhere, Calgary, hey, that's someplace. That's anywhere. That is, that fits the description. Calgary is a place.
and a fine place.
If he's willing to go anywhere, he's willing to come to Calgary. So that bodes well for smaller markets, I think.
Yeah, don't dig yourself a hole here, Greg. Okay, well, hey, we're gonna see. Not sure where it'll all end up, but I just wanted to let's switch over now to next Saturday night, and I thought it might be fun to take a look at what the lines could be. And initially I thought, do we try and forecast the lines Saturday night? It probably doesn't make a lot of sense. There's too many moving pieces, too many things up in the air. But I don't know, do you guys have any sense? Let's maybe look at what the lines might be to start the season out, because you've got guys missing, injuries and so forth. For a top line, looking at the forwards, I figured it would be Gaudreau, Monahan, and Mangiapane. Thoughts on that? Do you think that's a possibility, Colton?
Yeah, it kind of depends. I guess you kind of decide which one's your top line between the three you mentioned, and then Tkachuk, Lindholm, and Coleman, I guess it would be. So yeah, I think one of those two. I was kind of curious all year if they were going to go back, or all summer, sorry, if they were going to go back to the Gaudreau-Monahan pairing. I think they might as well give it another go here and kind of see. I mean, it's worked well in the past. I know the last couple of years, they've kind of both struggled a bit, but I think that's an interesting one to put back together, at least early on and see. So yeah, I think you're pretty right in your assessment there.
Yeah, Greg, thoughts on top line? I misspoke. I actually had Gaudreau, Lindholm, and Tkachuk as top line, but your thoughts?
Well, you mentioned, you said that you had Gaudreau, Lindholm, and Tkachuk as the top line, because that was the top line to finish last season, and it looked really good. They finally split up, Gaudreau and Monahan, and they had they're probably the three best most consistent players, and and their top three scorers, and so that actually was a good looking line. And but I think they're looking for more balance, and so when you spoke of Gaudreau, Monahan, and Mangiapane, and I think that'll be the second line. I think the most minutes are going to go to Gaudreau, Lindholm, and Coleman. And Coleman didn't play that much in the preseason, and Sutter was saying that it's he's played a lot of games in the last 2 years, and he didn't want to put too much of a load on him just in the preseason, and I can appreciate that. But I definitely think that top line with Coleman on it, they'll need some time to gel because he didn't get much preseason. But I think that's probably going to get the most minutes, and that's will be your de facto first line. And if Mangiapane can bring something to that combination of Monahan and Gaudreau, who have had all kinds of different wingers over the last 5 seasons, and I think Mangiapane might be the best that they've had for a long time. Remember, they were playing, Richie on that line last year for a while. I think with Mangiapane, I think you have 2 pretty darn good lines there at the top, and so I'm looking forward to seeing how that top 6 can really rebound and maybe get some goals this year.
Yeah. Well, the real interesting part of all this is the bottom 6. I guess in my opinion, I'd say Dubé, Backlund, Lucic, they're locks. I'd say they're going to carry 14 forwards. So in my estimation, there'd be 5 spots up for grabs. So assuming that on the bubble would be Walter Duehr, Brad Richardson, Lewis, Richie Fraze. I see he's been put on waivers, but that's necessary to get him down to Stockton. Godden and Kirkland. Of those guys on the bubble, any thoughts on, the 5 that would probably come up, Colton?
I think the reason they signed Lewis and Richardson was just Sutter's history with them, and they're really like the veteran kind of 4th line lunch pail guys that he really likes. So I'd be surprised if they didn't start the season with the team. I know a lot of people, and myself kind of included, were almost a bit upset seeing those signings, just feeling like they were blocking some young prospects. And I think that will turn out to be the case. I think they're Sutter style players. So I think those 2 are shoo-ins. Yeah. And then, like you said, Dubé's there, Backlund's there, Lucic is there. I think it'll be interesting to see how the last few kind of play out, but I think Lewis and Richardson will definitely start the season with the team.
Yeah. I mean, Greg, your thoughts listening to this, does it even make sense, to think about the lineup as being set in stone? I think Sutter himself said, look, there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to be able to play for the team. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be performance issues. And I'm going to be calling up a lot of guys from the AHL. Any thoughts on that? Can we really think of a lineup that they'll go with for the entire season, or?
Well, based on the signings, like I had, in the offseason signings, I had for a third line, Dubé, Backlund, and Pitlick. But Pitlick's been injured since the first game of the preseason. I haven't really heard much about a return time for him. It's been kind of very quiet on that front. So there's a hole there, that there's a space in the lineup for somebody. And I did write an article a couple of weeks ago about Sutter reuniting 3 of his old LA Kings, forwards with Lucic, Lewis, and Richardson for a 4th line, kind of a lunch pail line, as Colton had said. So I think, that probably is your 4th line. It's kind of 3 old guys, 3 not particularly fast, but they're going to be, I think, grinding it out and playing Sutter style hockey, as we keep saying over and over again. But I think those 3 guys are probably a lock for that 4th line. So that 3rd line, that hole on the wing where Pitlick was supposed to go, is open. And I know that Brett Ritchie will probably be like the 14th forward, carrying this year, but I don't know if he slots in there. I think he's the guy that Sutter will slot in and out. So I'm really hoping that Glenn Godden, even though he's a center, could slide into that 3rd line role just to keep him in the lineup. I think he's played well enough to earn a spot. Some of the other guys you mentioned, like Kirkland or, Walker Duehr, they're I think going to be destined for AHL time. But I think I'm hoping that Godden will fill that hole that Pitlick has left on that 3rd line.
Yeah, it's interesting you raise that point, Pitlick's injury, because I think it's going to open up, at least for the first few games until Pitlick is back, a slot for Duehr and Godden. So we'll see what they're made of if they get that chance. Turning to defense, Greg, let's start with you. You published an article on Thursday this week. Flames Shillington makes his case to crack the opening night roster. I figured Tanev, Hanifin, Anderson, Zadorov, and Valimaki are locks. And so there's a number of guys with opportunities. Sounds like you're sold on Shillington. He's played his way onto the team.
I think so. He played, I think, six or seven of the preseason games, and he just kept getting more and more responsibility and more minutes. And he looked very good. And that's with playing primarily with Goodbranson, which I was surprised by that, because Goodbranson hasn't been impressing anybody really. But Sutter actually had these 4 pairings that were kind of rotating in and out in the preseason, and those 4 you mentioned in the top 4, they're all locks, I'm sure. But he also had like Stone and Valimaki were a pair that was practicing together, and he's trying to create some chemistry. So I don't want to speak ill will of a player, but I really wish they would maybe turf some of these old guys and see what they have in the young guys. Like Goodbranson is getting paid a lot of money for this 1-year contract, so I think he's probably going to be in the lineup. But if I was the coach, and I'm not the coach, but if I was, I would probably bury him in the AHL if I could, or just have him as your 7th defenseman or something, and even play Shillington and Valimaki together, even though they're pretty inexperienced third pairing. But or even have Shillington move up the lineup and play with Tanev on a second pairing, and have like Rasmus Anderson and Noah Hanifin as your first pairing. Like, there's all kinds of stuff you can do, but I don't think they will do it. But so yeah, I think we're stuck with these old guys in the lineup, but I'm thinking that Shillington has made a case for him to be on that third pairing.
Yeah. Colton, final thoughts to you. I mean, I thought, I'd like to see Goodbranson and Stone down in the AHL, and like Greg, give the younger guys a chance. But do you think that'll happen?
Well, we alluded to that last week, right? When they signed Goodbranson and Stone, it kind of, to me, spelled the end of Shillington. It's strange. He's had a few different times where it seems like he's just been done in the organization. Like last season, I think he only played 8 games or so. But then, like Greg said, he's had a really good camp. He's played some really good games. So I think it'd be a shame if they don't, like, if he doesn't play in the opening night roster with how well he's played. I think that really shows you that this coaching staff, management's kind of, they have no confidence in him. They really aren't very interested in him as a player. So yeah, I hope he gets in there. Like Greg said, I haven't seen anything from Goodbranson that suggests he should, other than the money he's being paid. So yeah, I would like to see some of these younger guys get a shot, and Shillington's one of the main ones.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's close off on another thing that happened this week. That big crybaby, Connor McDavid, complaining about the Flames Tanev tripping him. I guess what happened was, McDavid was driving down the right side, and he cut towards the net really sharply, and Tanev was the last man back, and he made an attempt to stop McDavid, but he got his stick caught between his legs, and that caused him to crash into Markstrom. McDavid wouldn't let it go. I guess after in the post-game presser, complained about it and said that that those sorts of things should be called more. And I guess the last time that happened to him, well, not the last time, but that happened with Giordano, and he had a serious knee injury, took him out for quite a while. But what's your take on that, gentlemen? Colton, you wrote a piece, Flames Tanev responds to Oilers McDavid's criticism. My own view is, look, that's hockey. It's a dangerous game, and I'm not saying steps shouldn't be taken to make the game safer where you can, but how far do you take it? I mean, I can't imagine Tanev not making an effort to stop him, and surely you can't expect him not to McDavid to go unchallenged. And then McDavid, I mean, he's always pulling that, cutting hard to the net, and he's got to know that the result is going to be a goalie collision at some point, and he risk injury. I don't know. That's my 2 cents. Colton, let's start with you. What do you make of it all?
Yeah, I seem to, I guess, annoy both sides of the fan base with this one. But my thoughts were like you said, like Tanev. I mean, he can't just let him go by, right? I think he said it, and it's true. Like, he's not trying to hurt him on that play. He's trying to get the puck, and it's tough. Obviously, the game happens a lot faster than we see it from the stands, and it's 10 times faster than that when it's McDavid coming down the wing. So it's a tough thing. Like, of course, I can understand McDavid's frustration, just given he has had a couple of pretty serious injuries on plays like that. But at the same time, coming down with that speed, like, there's only so much a defender can do, right? Sometimes it's just going to turn out like that. Give him credit for being fearless, for going to the net like that all the time. But I do think sometimes those unfortunate plays will happen. The one thing I did say, and I know some Flames fans disagreed, was I personally do think that it is a trip in and should be a 2-minute penalty. But like the other way around is, if McDavid gets a serious injury, the Oilers could care less about that 2-minute power play. Their season is probably over. So it's like, at what cost, right? So I think it's a tough situation where I don't know exactly what the league could do to try and make it safer. I don't really know the answer there, but I don't think Tanev really did anything wrong on that play.
Yeah. Greg, what's your take on it? Anything the league could or should do with this sort of thing, or is it just part of the game?
Well, it is a tough issue because there's been a history of players over the league. Like, I remember people would mock Sidney Crosby for complaining about obstruction and other things, like, and people taking runs at him. And I'm old enough to remember when people used to call Wayne Gretzky like whiner, Wayne the whiner, because he used to do the same thing. Because I think the elite players, I think it's their job in a way to push for this kind of stuff. If you look at other sports, the NFL, introduced, a lot of rule changes to protect their quarterbacks. They're superstars, with like instituting like these headshot rules. You couldn't lower your helmet contact. It's automatic, like major foul, and NFL, like, some leagues have really tried to protect their superstar players. So I don't blame the NHL superstars like McDavid. People kind of mock him for like crying about it. But I think he has to advocate for him and the other star players, but what the solution is I don't know, because that kind of play like that, it's how do you prevent something like that? It's just the game happens at a really fast pace, and even faster with McDavid. So on one side, I don't blame him for complaining, but there's not much you can do at this point without some major changes to the game, and that's not really my department. I'm not the head of player safety in the NHL, even though I could. If I applied for that job, I might get it. But I currently don't hold that job, so I have no idea what to do.
All right. Well, I don't know. We'll back you on that, Greg. We'll give you a recommendation. So who knows? But we'd hate to lose you on this show, though. I don't know how you balance the two. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you very much. We've run out of time, but as always, that was a great discussion. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And thanks, everybody, for joining us this week for another edition of the Flames Faceoff, and we'll be back next week. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give us a follow on Twitter and Facebook. Give us a like, please, on YouTube and Facebook, and do share this with your fellow Flames fans. And be sure to check out some of the great content that we have here at thehockeywriters.com. Until next week, take care.